Welcome to Pursuing Truth. I'm your host, Barry Watkins. Hi, welcome to Pursuing Truth. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to talk to Heath. He is a former alcoholic. He got sober through AA. He found God through AA, and he has a fascinating story. After that point, he fell back, wasn't in AA anymore, had to get sober again after a number of years as an atheist. And he just talks a lot about that journey. It's a fascinating, encouraging story. I hope you enjoy it. All right, so this is Heath. So tell me a little bit about yourself, Heath.
So, just on the surface, I'm 48, married, daughter and two dogs that I absolutely love, go hiking with them every day, and I run a business. And as far as being an atheist, what I guess would resonate with me, or what kind of rings home, is, probably about 15 years ago, I came across some videos, James Randi videos. I started watching Atheist Experience, that type of stuff. And it really cleared some things up. I mean, we could get into that later, but I was in AA in my 20s, staying sober, and kind of found God that way. I don't know if you want to call it Christianity. It was kind of make up your own God.
Yeah.
But and in my 30s, I wasn't in AA. So, I got sober again in my 40s. So,
Oh, yeah.
Well, mixed bag of who I am, that type of thing. If that.
Sure, yeah. Well, how did you start out religiously and everything? Were you in a Christian home, or like a church going home?
My dad's Jewish and my mom's Christian, and it was really odd that they met, because my mom was brought up in a Pentecostal type religion. Okay. And she was kind of the black sheep of the family, but she really wasn't a terrible person, but she just wasn't going to church every Sunday and speaking in tongues and all that nonsense.
Oh, yeah.
But they talk about Catholic guilt or Jewish guilt. I don't know what kind of guilt she had, but about 6 times a year she dragged me into some church where they were screaming and hollering and speaking in tongues, just enough to freak me out.
Exactly.
I remember the one thing that always stands out: when I was about 11, she dropped me off at some Christian camp, because for like 2 weeks, and every day they had to come to Jesus or burn in hell, but we love you type revival. And all kids. So that was my childhood, to answer your question. Yeah. And my dad never really, if the most Jewish culture, I mean, they're Jewish culturally, but they don't really, practice it. So
yeah. So you never went to a temple or synagogue or anything?
Times, but I definitely don't know much about it. There's one up the street I've been to probably 5 times in my life.
Okay. So. Yeah. Well, I was Pentecostal, so I know all about the tongue talking and all that stuff, So yeah, it got a little crazy, that's for sure. So yeah, and as a kid, I can relate. I can understand how that would be could be a little frightening, right? It's kind of like, okay, what's going on, right?
Well, and it was so odd. I thought, man, everyone sure is taking this calm. Like, you're going to be burning in hell. I mean, we should be running up and down the street telling people. I mean, right. There's a cancer epidemic, or coronavirus goes worldwide. We all go crazy, trying to make sure everyone knows. But
it's kind of like, it's like a disconnect, right? It's like you're not really reacting like you should. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, there was always a part of me that doubted it, but it gets a hold of that fear. So you're kind of like secretly like, Jesus, you're my Lord and Savior. It's like, you want to make sure, I accept you into my heart. Just in case you get into an accident or something. But anyway. For me, the biggest thing is, it really got down to when I started watching that guy James Randi debunk paranormal psychics, and it really didn't have anything to do with religion. It was more about just supernatural. And once I took my focus off, is Christianity true or not? And I just looked at it more from an outside. It just over a course of 6 months, maybe 12 months of watching these videos, it really hit me almost like a spiritual experience. And I always remember walked into my backyard and I looked up and I was like, it's the funniest thing. I don't know why I thought of this, but I said, there's no way Mary was a virgin. I don't know why that was the first thing I thought of. It traveled from there. I was like, it's none of it is true. Like psychics, all that. I mean, maybe it's true, but there's never been any evidence for it,
Right,
So,
right. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's similar to what I had as far as when it kind of started falling apart for me. It was one thing led to another, for me. Now, for me, it was also I was maybe really deep into my religion. I was like it became central to my life. And so for me, it was hard to let go. It was kind of like it took me about really 10 years to process doubts until I finally came to the conclusion, wow, I don't think any of it's true. So for you, it was pretty quick, I think.
But hear me say, here was the three phases. It was like exciting because I finally understood that it was all BS, and it was so clear to me. I don't know if you've ever had something in your life where you always thought, there was a red house behind you, and you find out 20 years later it's a blue house or whatever, not a house. So it was that at first, but the second was fear. I was in fear for a few years because I had built a foundation. See, you got to understand in AA, it's very religious, even though they say it's not, but they have a foundation of beliefs, of letting go. It's very similar to Christianity. It's anonymous. You don't tell people you're in the program. So you kind of, you do all your prayer and meditation, and you only kind of share it with your AA people. Point is, foundation on you. If I'm afraid to go for a job interview, I pray about it, I write about it. It's all about God. What does God want? God this, God that. And when something bad happened, it was easier to accept because this was what God wanted for me. So this is what I need to get to the other side. Once all that, I had to build this whole new foundation. So
yeah. So okay, so now maybe we'll talk a little bit about your journey with addiction and everything. How that developed for you, and then like the AA part of what you went through. I'm getting that. I'm hearing what you're saying about that. It's you weren't necessarily going to church all the time or anything like that, but you were living it. It was a spiritual journey you were on as far as accepting God, and then really talk some more about that.
So it was as real as the chair I'm sitting in. I mean, I can tell you that. And in AA, I feel like it's almost more real because I feel like, and this is a generalization, but a lot of the Christians out there, they just kind of go to church and don't really live by it. But one thing, I guess it's almost a compliment. The people in AA, most of them that are actually active members, they really do walk the walk. I mean, they, not all of them, but most of them. And so you're in there 6-7 days a week. I mean, at least 5 days a week minimum. Every meeting people, you're involved, you're helping, you're volunteering, you're taking people to meetings. You have a sponsor you're working with, and that's all your friends. I mean, it's similar to like Jehovah's Witness. I mean, that's all your friends. Yeah. So, so when I left AA, it was mainly not because I quit believing or anything. I just quit going to meetings because I got married and life started progressing, and it was maybe 3-4 years after I left AA that I became an atheist. So yeah, I was active in my drinking, and once I left AA, it was a few years before the drinking really got out of hand. 2 years later, it was out of hand, and so I was drinking pretty bad for about 10 years. I got sober. If I'm 48, I got sober again at 42, and everywhere you went, it was always about God, and no one could understand why it was so frustrating for me. They're like, but you can just make up your own God. It could be a chair if you want. It could be the tree outside. And it's like, yeah, but I just don't believe in any of that stuff. I mean, I got to have a different way of approaching this sobriety. So
tell me some more about that. Like, maybe explain some more about why that was as big of an issue with the groups, because isn't there more to it than just, oh, you pick a higher power, you have a higher power that you're answering to, but actually the whole thing, from what I understand, is about giving over to this higher power, right? There's a lot more to it than just
your thinking got you here. Your thinking got you here, so quit thinking. You need to do what we say. You're flawed. You know how in Christianity you have a sin? Well, we have character defects. It's the same. the exact history, but the guy who started it was very similar to Christianity, a lot of the principles. But yeah, I mean, everything you come in there with a problem, everything you want to talk about, it's always about God. In fact, if it's not number one in your life, you will drink again. I mean, this is told to you every day.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and the hardest part about getting sober without a God is it was scary to think I had to do this on my own.
Yeah.
Even if it was before, it's just psychologically, I'm like, wow, so when something bad happens to me, it's just something bad. Like, it wasn't really supposed to happen, or it wasn't a good, it wasn't part of some divine plan to get me to the other side to, something great.
Oh,
But anyway, so when I was in AA, that's what it was like. So going back there, it was just I couldn't do it this time. I went to a handful of meetings, but I just couldn't do it. So I found a therapist. I went to for a couple months. I went to, I think it's called SOS. It's like secular something recovery.
Okay.
So I know you probably want to hear more about what it was like in the program, but it was really as simple as you went to these meetings, you prayed every time, you got up in the morning, you did prayer and meditation on your knees. You usually had a little verse or something. It was out of these and literally everything that happened in your life was God's plan.
Yeah.
Do with God. I mean, God was always a part of this. If you met one, I mean, you met a girl, God, am I supposed to meet her? I mean, that's the other thing. In AA, there was a lot of benefits from it. You had love, you had friendship, but you also had that confusion. God fog. I never have that anymore. Things are very clear to me now. Sometimes I'm pissed about a situation I'm in, sometimes I'm not. But that's all it is. It's not someone messing with me. It's not. And what's funny, when you talk to a theist about this, they go, oh yeah, I don't believe he does every little thing. And it's like, oh, BS. Yes, you do.
When you're a believer.
Yeah.
You don't realize, I think, how much of mind bending you're having to do, right, to make it all work. Right? I think that's part of what you talk about as fog. For me, I feel like that's where I was, because it's cognitive dissonance is going on the whole time. I think as an atheist, I see the world completely differently. For one thing, in Pentecostalism, we believed in demons, and we believed that there was a demon behind everything that's happening. It's like, oh yeah, the demons, and I got to pray them away. And plead the blood of Jesus over your life, every day, and get filled with the Spirit every day. Well, all of that is, because now looking at it, I'm like, okay, that's all like a crutch that has no basis in fact. It's like I feel like it's helping me, but really it's not doing what you need it to do. You're right.
Well, the biggest thing for me, maybe this is obvious, is it's not true. Like, you're trying to believe in something that is absurd. I mean, there's a part of your brain that's going, this is crazy.
Right.
In AA, we always joked it was kind of like special ed class for the church people, because we always kind of had a hard time with church. So it was into AA long enough, you could take your training wheels off and go to regular church. I mean, that's kind of what I used to say. But yeah, no, we always, the demons and all that stuff. And, again, AA didn't have demons, but they called it alcoholism. I mean, they gave alcoholism a life. It was strange. I mean, you looked about it like it was the devil,
Okay. All right.
So, I mean,
it's your enemy, right? Yeah.
But, to get through all that, I mean, it's what you say, you're having cognitive dissonance. I mean, things aren't lining up, but you go there long enough and you do kind of start to believe it. And you find ways to justify it. You're like, oh, okay, maybe, for 10 years you obsess about, does everything happen in God's world by mistake? Or, I mean, by whatever, is it all meant to be? You spend 10 years obsessing, and then finally you go, maybe this is all BS. I mean, maybe there is no God, it's funny how when you can think clearly. There was a phase when I became an atheist that I almost jokingly would tell people I want to go door to door and be like, did you hear there's no God? Like, this is all BS. Let me explain. Let me pull up the videos. You want to watch them? It's like,
I know.
It's true, but there's absolutely zero evidence for it. I mean, maybe 1,000 years from now, they find evidence for some type of God that started something that, whatever. But as of now, there's no evidence for it. So,
yeah. Yep. Yeah. So now you're when you were talking about the secular program that you were in then that was successful, right? Um,
Yeah, I went once a week, and I went 8 times. I went for 2 months, and it
okay.
was SOS. We went there, and it was similar to AA in the sense that you shared your experience and how long you've been sober and the troubles you're going through, but you didn't have the prayer. You definitely didn't have. We had in AA we had a what we called a big book. It was basically our Bible. I don't know how familiar, but that was our
I've
Bible.
heard of that. Yeah.
They didn't have a Bible. They just had a work booklet. You know,
Yeah.
I always, I might be jumping around a little. I always felt in AA it was funny because the first 184 pages of the big book never changed. So whatever they wrote in 1930,
Yeah.
that's what you go by. And I thought, could you imagine if they did that in a hospital? Like if you had cancer and they went by the treatment they had in 1930s. I mean, you
Right.
would like you about them. You'd be like, I want the latest, the best. Not some
That's right.
word system. It was written 100 years ago.
Yeah. So yeah, take me through the rest of your journey then from there. Like so
So basically, in my 30s, I was drinking and I was trying to get sober, but this time getting sober, I realized that my wife kind of gave me an ultimatum. I basically, it was time to get serious about it. And I had been going to therapy a little bit already, and I had actually been trying to get sober, but this time I knew I had to. And it's amazing what you can do when you accept your situation for what it is, and
okay.
and you're done with the excuses, and you're like, this is what I got to do. I got to get sober. So that's basically what it's been. And the thing is, now I really don't think about atheism too much anymore, because
Yeah.
I'm 38. This was literally like when I was around 31, 32 years old that I went through all this.
Oh yeah.
So it's kind of, sometimes I have to, when I'm talking about it in a situation like this, I have to kind of jar my memory as to what in the heck has been going on the last 15, 18 years. So but I love my life today. I mean, I'm sober. I'm a big with my dogs every day. We go to work together, and I'm married, and everything's great. And I just love not having that God fog. I mean, that's all. I love that word God fog, because I think so many people that are atheists that used to be believers, I think they understand that. I think they realize the condition they lived in.
That's right.
And you are being wise by seeking truth. It's like, no, dude, you're confused. You're trying to believe some stuff. It's BS, and you can't make sense of it. I mean,
Yeah.
and I was like, no wonder we've had a hard time with it. It's like once you can see things clearly, you're like, no wonder this was you know, all out of whack. I mean, hard to believe.
Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, what do you feel like are maybe is there one key or is there a few keys as far as what helped you come back to sobriety and all that?
uh, so the thing is with getting sober, I know this. There's a little bit of an unknown to it, because it's really as simple as you got to be willing to do what you got to. You got to be willing to go to any length to get sober. Within reason. I mean, you don't want to go kill someone to get sober, but you got to be willing to say, this is a problem. I accept it, and I'm ready to do something about it. And that's kind of where I was at. So
Yeah.
the focus being on my family. I still go to therapy. I've actually got a therapist I've seen for almost 10 years, and I started him because I was like, okay, surely a therapist can help you if you're wanting to get sober in a secular way.
Oh yeah.
And what is the very first or second time I had my therapist, I remember I'm telling about me being an atheist and these videos I watched and how I realized it's not, there's no evidence for it and blah, blah, blah. He goes, well, none of us know. He started that, that hippie shit.
Okay.
Well, no, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But that was only one time, because I go, no, you're not understanding me. And I explained, and ever since then he's been real professional. Leave it alone. He helps me get to what I want to get to in a secular way. But it's funny how everybody, even a therapist, can be chewed up to bring God in the mix.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
I was talking, we were going to marriage counseling about, I don't know, a while ago, and I was telling the marriage counselor about how I'm an atheist now. And he started in on, well, when you're little, you have God, you have little shoes on, and now you're big and you need your adult shoes on. Basically, trying to come up with a metaphor for you just got to believe in Jesus in an adult way, not a child way. And it's like, oh my God, what is it with you people? It's like,
Yeah.
tell you something. I feel like I kind of tell my story a little backwards or pieces, but I remember one thing, the way I justified or really thought, because I did believe that there was a God. I
Yeah.
just was like, maybe we don't know the details. I mean, I think that's what everyone, I mean, 90% of your theists out there, they say, well, maybe there's some details I got wrong, but overall it's true. And what I would credit to it is when something good would happen. So and the thing in life is things still good happen as an atheist, and you realize that, of course, that built up my faith in God so much. Like when I got sober, I was scared to go get whatever a job, and I'd go get the job and it'd work out, or I was afraid to start my business, and I'd start my business, and you turn around a year later and you'd see it all worked out, and you're like, wow, God, you got this perfect plan for me, and he's got it. And that's how, if someone told me they didn't believe in God, I'm like, no, come with me for a week. Just hang out with me. I'm going to show you how he's real. When you're worried or afraid about something, pray and then go through it and see that what you were worried about doesn't usually happen. Well, guess
That's
what?
right.
That's just life. Like things in life we're always worried about and they don't usually happen. It's got
That's
nothing
right.
to do with the God thing. I can
That's
kind
good.
of digest that and flip it and understand that in a secular way without the God glasses.
Oh yeah.
I forget someone wrote a book like that, but I felt like I had God glasses on.
Oh yeah. 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 For me, it's I thought of it as kind of stepping back from my emotions about the whole thing is what helped me see clearly. So like you're saying about prayer, if 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 we all just really analyzed it intellectually, then
Yeah,
we would see through it and say, wait a minute, when I pray, sometimes it happens good, sometimes it ends up bad.
right.
I remember the good because, oh, when I prayed, it turned out good. But I'm praying all the time and it doesn't always turn out good. And
Yeah,
it's funny. It's like a statistical thing. You could actually map it out. I had plenty, as a Pentecostal, I prayed for people to be healed all the time, and
yeah.
I had plenty of people that didn't get healed and they died. I mean, after I prayed for them, and I'm like, how long does it take to, ignoring all that to finally figure out, no, it doesn't add up. That prayer doesn't really seem like it's doing anything.
Yeah, and see, I remember one time my wife and I I'd been an atheist for a couple years, and we were at a neighbor's house playing cards or something, and I had a sore arm. Well, towards the end, the lady goes, "Oh, do you want me to pray for your arm?" And I was finally at a place where I was comfortable being an atheist, and I just looked over. I was like, "No." And it was a couple things. One, that I wasn't such a people pleaser that I could simply tell her no, I didn't want that, because that's bullshit. And
Yeah.
then the second thing was, I didn't have to feel like I was fighting something and that really God is real, but I'm fighting something and I'm angry and he really could heal my arm, but I don't want to let him. Like it
Oh
was
yeah.
none of in the past, it would have been some of that weird psychological stuff, if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah.
So, but yeah,
Like there's
it's fun.
some reason you didn't get healed. There's always reasons, right? Yeah.
And the thing is, it's like you said, even the bad things that happen to you as a believer, you can always find something good about it. You're like,
Oh
oh,
yeah.
well, I didn't meet her because then I met her and she was the one I was supposed to marry, or I didn't get
That's right.
this, fell through, and I felt no, because if you go through life, most things that happen, especially if you're in the United States or Canada or a good country, most of the time good things happen. I mean, it's
That's
not
right.
rocket.
That's
But,
really good. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I love it. Yeah. So what kind of uh, changing gears? What kind of business do you do?
so I have a retaining wall business. So we do retaining walls, and it's basically all I've done. I mean, I'm 48, and I started this when I was about 22. So I've had this for a long time. So it's a good business, and we do well with it. My wife helps me, and you know, hopefully about 10 more years I can retire.
Oh
So,
yeah. Well, there's lots of construction going on around you, I think.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
yeah.
The COVID hit. Everybody was at home, so they
Oh,
were
yeah.
called retaining walls like crazy. So
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah, that's cool. Good.
yeah.
What were you doing before that?
And that's all I've ever done. So I
Ah,
went
okay.
to a school, North Georgia Technical College for horticulture. It was a trade school, and then I
Okay.
got out. I worked for like a lawn maintenance company for a few years, and I started my own business. So
Wow, great. Yeah.
yeah, pretty
Good.
boring.
Well, I think every business owner I've ever talked to, especially small business, you probably would never change. You would not
Yeah.
never go work for someone else or
I've always said I'd rather make half the money working for myself than double the money working for the man, as they say.
yeah, yeah, that's good. Yeah,
Yeah. But anyway,
yeah.
yeah, it's all good. So yeah, and I'm married. I'll be married 19 years this November, and nothing to do with atheism, but it's funny. One thing a little different is we knew each other 6 weeks, only 6 weeks from the day I met her, and we got married. And
Hmm.
it's so really lucky because it could have went the other way. And so it was, you
Yeah.
know, my wife is from another country, from Chile, and so anyway, I don't know if that was a random. You can edit out.
Well, that's a big part of your life too. So, how does that work for you relationship wise with beliefs and all? Is she a believer or unbeliever?
It was the strangest thing. She would, the first few years of our marriage, she kind of believed, I guess, but I still believed. So we would go to church, not every Sunday, but we'd visit churches, and I was still in that mess that I'd been in all my life, where you're trying to believe it, but you have doubt, and maybe it's true. So to answer your question, when I started watching all these videos and going through this and talking to her about it, she goes, I said, I don't believe any of this. I said, it's bullshit. And she looked at me, so we don't have to go to church anymore? And I said, no. I knew all that was bullshit.
No
And
kidding.
are you kidding me? You didn't think it was real? She goes, no, but I mean, I don't mind going. I don't mind going. So I guess she just doesn't take it as she's an atheist. She's just never, I don't know if you've known people like that. They just always kind of
Uh-huh.
thought shit, never really made an issue out of it. So that's
That's
kind
right.
of
Yeah.
played out all right. So,
That's good. Yeah.
to raise my daughter. Like I read, Dan Barker. He was a minister, and
Mhm.
and I wrote a book. Maybe yes, maybe no. It's kind of a skeptic book for kids. So I used to read my daughter that. So I got the reader when Richard Dawkins came out with that book, The Magic or something. I forget the name of it, but it was a child's book for evolution, and I was
Right.
able to read it to her. So I was able to bring her up with secular values. Is all
Yeah.
not pollute her mind with that nonsense I got.
That's a big
So
deal. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that
Our hope is that our kids can have some hope to think for themselves, right?
well, and it's funny because my daughter's 16 now, drives and does her own thing, but she every now and then she'll come to me and ask me a question about Christianity, and I forget how crazy it sounds because she doesn't know any of the stories, and she's like, so Jesus was Mary's mother, and it wasn't. So why did God flood everyone? I don't understand that. It's
Oh
like
yeah.
you try. And when you're explaining it to her, you're like, God, that is crazy. I mean, the only way you could believe that is if it was part of your culture and everyone else believed it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's
yeah.
good. Yeah, I had a boss one time that I worked for who was not a believer, and I remember just talking to him daily and things. He was a very smart guy, and I was a believer at the time, and I was witnessing to someone over the phone after work one night,
Yeah,
and he
yeah.
was there in the background, and I'm listening to myself talk as if I was him. And I thought, yeah, I sound ridiculous. The stuff that I'm telling this friend of mine, when I listen to myself talk, I'm like, yeah, something's not right about this.
Yeah.
It's a matter of perspective. Sometimes the words that you're listening to, if they're not making sense, it's funny how we can believe it even though it didn't make sense.
it's hard to, where you're at today, it's hard to even get your head around that you believe that. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
it's almost like how you always hear Christians say, "Well, you weren't a real believer if you're an
uh-huh.
atheist." And I do find that arrogant. It pisses me off. But I gotta, if I'm being honest, I almost feel like that with Christians. I'm like, you don't really believe this shit, do you? And I have to remind us, maybe they do. And it's not for you to say. It's like they're doing the stuff they're doing. Because it's like, I mean, your boss sitting there listening to you. I've got so many experiences like that you would think you're helping people, and they're looking at you like, dude, you're whack job. What are you talking about? It's like
Yeah,
it's like you got to fix it.
yeah,
But anyway,
yeah, yeah. At that time, my friend who I was talking to was buying it completely, and but I was sitting there, and what I was telling him was this basically. The way I'd learned to talk about it was okay, sin is like separating us from God, and it's like a big chasm between you and God. And Jesus came along, and he's the way to God. So he died in our place and took our sin. So to get to God, we have to put our sin, give our sins over to Jesus, right? And God puts them on him. It just
yeah,
sounds so weird now.
that sounds so crazy. I mean,
It's like, okay, God himself decides, I'm not going to forgive you unless I blame someone else for your sins. I'm going to take your sins and put them on someone else. How does that make sense? How is that fair?
yeah, like Matt Dillahuntley says, how many times does it take for God to get it right? You had the apple, you had the flood, you had Jesus come. I mean,
Yeah,
it's like, come on, dude. And they're like, well, we can't have, so we got to have sin in the world because you have to have free will. And then the atheist argument is, well, when you go to heaven, Michael Shermer says, well, when you go to heaven, are you going to have free will? Yeah. Is there sin in heaven? No. It's like, so why not just make it like this? I mean, on earth, don't have it even just be here on earth. I mean, if you can do it in heaven, why can't you do it here? I
that's right.
mean, it's so obvious. We just came up with something to understand the world around us. I mean, that's what it was. I mean,
Yeah,
it's obvious as the chair I'm sitting in. I mean, you
yeah.
know,
Hey, thanks for joining us today on Pursuing Truth. I want to say thanks to Heath for sharing his story. I got a lot out of it, and I enjoyed it immensely. So, and I hope you guys did too. Uh, we'll be in touch. Have a great day. Bye bye.